This interview is with Beth Smith, who was a member of the Army Nurse Corps during World War II. The interview is taking place in Houston, Texas on March the 8th, 1996. Interviewed by Dr. Vernon L. Williams, Department of History, Abilene Christian University. Beth, if you would, give us a little background on your family, where you grew up, who your parents were, and what kind of experience you had growing up there before you went to nursing school.
My parents were Frank and Lula Boardman. We lived on a farm about 8 miles out of Henrietta. Cotton, I used to have to pick cotton, which I hated. That's one of the things I remember about childhood. But they were good parents, and I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. There were 4 of us in the family.
What were their names?
The oldest was Frank, and then my sister Anna Burke, and then my brother Jack, and then me. And we were all very close. We were very close. And we were all in the Army at the same time, all overseas at the same time. I can't believe that. I was looking back on it now. But my sister went to Parkland. I had an aunt that was the director of nurses down there, or director of education. And so she went, and then I went when I finished high school. And it was a 3-year program then. I got my RN there. And, of course, it was in 41 when I finished at nursing school. And there were practically everyone in my class went into the Army. We had a huge number of going into the Army. And I went, there was another nurse, and I went to Fort Sam. And that's where we started out, at Fort Sam, Houston.
Well, of course, Anna was ahead of you. What was she doing?
She had gone, after she finished, she'd gone over to Vanderbilt, University of Vanderbilt in Tennessee, and worked on her degree, and then came back and worked out in West Texas. She worked out in Lubbock during the dust storms, and then she came into the Army with me.
Tell me a little bit about nursing school before we go on to the Army, how that was set up in terms of housing, and was it a lot like going to college, or how was the scheduling and that kind of thing?
Well, when I first went in, you talk about housing, there were 20 of us lived in the same room. We had cots, and you're young, you think, you don't think anything about it, you just do it. Then, of course, as we got old, stayed in longer, we got rooms. Sometimes we first went into a double room, then I later got a private room. And we worked and went to school. The hospital paid us $10 a month. And we got our uniforms, food, housing, everything. We didn't have to pay for that. But we worked. Sometimes would be working up to, well, depending on how much schooling we were going, we would put in an 8-hour day.
You said most of your classmates went to the Army. What was the incentive? Was there any kind of pressure placed on the classmates?
No, it was just the war, the situation. The Army was, many men were going in, being called in, and it was, they didn't pressure us, but we heard about it, and it was something that was, everybody felt was a good thing to do.
What about hospitals? Was there a demand for nurses? Were they competing with the Army for the graduates? What do you remember about that situation?
I don't think so. I think I don't remember that. I chose Fort Sam Houston on my own. Now, I don't remember why, but no, I don't think there was any competition.
Were there any recruiters, Army recruiters, that came to the School of Nursing?
I don't remember any. I don't remember.
Well, tell us a little bit about going to Fort Sam and what you experienced at the very beginning when you enlisted.
Well, we got there. This friend of mine went down. We went on a train and we met at the station and take out to Fort Sam Houston, and given a room and everything. But then we went on duty. We went almost immediately. I can remember. This is sort of funny, but I thought when we went in the Army we'd have just men patients, because when you take care of women you have so much more to do. You have to give them a bedpan. So I got on this. They gave me this ward where there was the women of the officers, the wives of the officers. And I walked into this room, I remember it, and the first thing she said was, "I want a bedpan."
That was your first duty as a...
duty. So, but anyway, we worked, and I gave you that, what we did as a nurse is what an aide does today. We bathed the patients. We took care of we rubbed their back in the afternoon and gave them their medications and took their temperature. We did not take blood pressures. We didn't give IVs.
Why was that?
Why? We weren't trained to. That is something that the interns and the residents did back in those days. Now the nurses do all this. Back in those days, we did not do that. We were not trained to do that. It's a different world.
What about uniforms and any kind of military training in terms of military courtesy, instruction, or any of that? Did you get any of that when you got to Fort Sam?
Yes. We wore a uniform, and we were taught, how to salute, that kind of thing, and we didn't have we had a uniform that we wore on duty. I can't remember when I first got the uniform that I wore, 24 hours, constantly, But it was not too long after that we got uniforms. Our first uniform was a navy blue uniform. The skirt and the jacket and all the insignia and the little cap. And then later we went into the khaki color uniform. But we wore uniforms.
Were you given any instructions at all about relationships between you and enlisted personnel?
Yes. We could not date enlisted personnel. We could not. We could go out with other officers, but we could not have a, date.
What about other officers? Did rank have any?
No.
Didn't matter?
No.
Do you remember the other nurses having any trouble with this rule?
No. We didn't. The only enlisted men that we came in contact with were those that were working with us on the wards. And then, of course, the officers we met at the officers' clubs and that kind of thing.
Could you think back to that time when you were working at Fort Sam? Some of the other nurses that became friends of yours, do any of them come to mind today? And could you tell us a little bit about any of those people? Any impressions that you have of them?
Well, I remember one, Eliza Ray, was from Virginia. She and I became very good friends. And of course, I've lost contact of her, a long time ago. But yeah, we got to be good friends with a number of people.
What about recreation?
Recreation, going to the officers' clubs and the dances and going downtown San Antonio and, just regular things what most of the other officers did.
What about, go ahead.
Oh, I have a memory and a picture someplace of getting onto this airplane, we were taken to a dance. They flew us to it.
Where on earth did you go?
Not too far away. It was,
An attempt to impress, maybe?
I don't know what it was, but anyway.
What about officers, doctors, superior officers who were nurses over you? Any of those people make an impression on you?
I can't remember too many at Fort Sam. They were all very respectful, very, I never had any trouble with any of them. They were, everybody, we seemed to get along, and that was good.
Was most of your work there at Fort Sam simply ward work?
Yes.
No surgery or anything like that?
No, I never did go into surgery. No, it was all ward work, yeah.
How long were you at Fort Sam?
I went there, of course, in September of '41 and left in March of '43
And where did you go?
to Camp Barkeley, Texas, Abilene.
How did that assignment come about? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, this was a constant thing during those days. They were moving you on, getting you ready to go, I think, go overseas. And now whether this was just more of a step that direction or not, I don't know. I didn't ask for the transfer, but we got it.
How many went with you? Any?
Well, my sister did, and I think that was about only one I remember going from Fort Sam at that time.
Do you remember your arrival in Abilene?
No.
What do you remember about the station hospital there?
Well, it was all I don't think you call them Quonset huts, but they've...
Hutments.
Yes. It was, there again, we worked on the wards and did my 8-hour service, and it was more or less just like, at Fort Sam, we were doing the similar work, but I don't remember.
What about your quarters? Can you describe your quarters and how that was set up at Barkeley?
At Barkeley, well, we lived in one of those houses. I can't remember how many of us were, probably 5 or 6 in the one together. I can't remember exactly.
Could you describe the interior of that facility?
Well, it was, bed, tiny little chest in between, and I don't remember even where we hung our clothes. And we all shared the same bathroom.
Was that connected to that structure?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And could you remember where that structure was in relation to other structures? Were there all women's quarters around there, or were you close to any of the male barracks?
No. We were not close to the male barracks. All the women were isolated, as such.
How far away from the station hospital?
That again, I don't. It was very close, but I don't remember.
Was it walking distance?
Oh yes, yeah. Every place we were, we walked. Yeah.
What about other nurses there at Barkeley? Do you remember any of them?
Yes, because there were about 5 or 6 of us that went on to Camp Campbell together and then on into the 40th. See, we went to Camp Campbell to join the 40th General. We didn't go there to work in the hospital.
So the 40th actually organized there and then moved to outside of Paris?
It organized in Camp Campbell. Then we went up to Camp Kilmer in New Jersey to catch to sail over to England. Okay. And we were in England for a year before we went to Paris.
Did your sister Anna do the same kind of duty that you did?
Yes, yeah.
And was she a roommate of yours?
Yes, usually, yes, yeah.
What out, since you are at Abilene, you're close to Henrietta, did you all go home often?
I went home one time on leave. No, we didn't have, Abilene and Henrietta are far enough away that you don't, we didn't have cars. We took a bus, and, we couldn't go just any time, over the weekend, because we didn't have weekends off. We worked 7 days a week.
Who were some of these young nurses that were friends of yours in that group of 4 or 5? Remember names?
Well, it was Polly Harris. Let's see, I don't think Eileen Mallory was with us there. Of course, my sister Ann. I remember their faces, but a lot of them I don't remember their names because it's been so long ago.
What about physicians or head nurses? Remember any of them?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, don't.
What about German POWs? Ever have any encounters with them?
Yes, one time when we were in Paris.
But not at Barkeley?
No, no.
What happened in Paris?
Well, I remember this German coming down the hall, and I was sort of didn't like the idea.
He was a patient?
Yes. But that was the only encounter we had with the Germans.
Were you aware of the German POWs at Barkeley before you left, or were they not there yet?
No, I did not know any of them, no.
Can you remember any other military units, any contact you had with officers on social occasions or in the line of duty that were stationed there other than the medical training facility?
Well, we went out with some of the, were they engineers with the 11th Armored Division? Mostly were engineers. I can't remember what his name was, but I remember dating one. And then I remember dating a young Air Force man, but I don't remember his name either. That's, so long ago, and didn't keep contact with them.
What about contact with the community of Abilene? Did you attend any functions, recreational kinds of things?
No.
Did the nurses tend to frequent, for example, any of the activities put on by the community for that other officers would attend, or were they more single dating kinds of activity?
No, we attended mostly at the officers' club, but I don't remember going to anything. Maybe I don't remember anything.
Did you ever encounter any of the women pilots that were stationed over in Sweetwater at Avenger Field?
No.
Never had occasion to have any of them as patients?
No.
Was your patients at Barkeley primarily male, or did you have females there?
I don't remember any females. All males.
Anything else that you can think of that, in terms of impressions relating to Camp Barkeley?
No.
What about medical conditions of patients? Now, there's been, in recent years, I know that Corps of Engineers have contacted me because of our activity out there in terms of archaeology, that there's been some investigation into the possibility of biological warfare experiments going on there during training. Did you have any patients that sort of you remember that had
No.
burns or anything like that?
No, I don't remember anything like that. No.
Well, you were at Barkeley about 6 months.
Yes.
What were you told when you were given orders to go to Camp Campbell?
Well, we were told that we were getting ready to go overseas. We were going up with a general hospital that would be going overseas. We knew that.
Did you have any kind of special preparation, any kind of issue of uniform supplies, equipment, or anything like that at Barkeley?
I don't remember anything extra. We may have. I don't remember anything extra.
Tell me a little bit about the trip and who, if you can remember, went with you to Camp Campbell.
To Camp Campbell? Well, there again, my sister and my friend Polly Harris. I have a list of them that went from, but I can't remember off their names right now.
What happened once you arrived at Camp Campbell?
That again, I can't remember.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yes. And we were, I don't even remember how long we were there. Well, apparently not too long before we got on the, going on up the...
Do you remember anything of the voyage over?
Overseas? Mm-hmm. On the ship?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, we first, when we were we first got on the Ile-de-France to go overseas, and we were there on the Ile-de-France overnight, and then they got us off real fast and sent us back to Camp Kilmer. And then that was right before Christmas, and then right after Christmas we got on the Queen Elizabeth.
You don't know why they took you off?
No, they were never told why, but they got us off fast.
What do you mean by fast? Were they hurrying you along?
Yes.
Like there was some urgency?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But nothing ever happened to the ship?
No, not that I know of, no. But anyway, we got on the Queen Elizabeth, and that's pretty, pretty high sailing. And the food was great. Everything was wonderful, just wonderful. But and this is, I always remember the night that they told us to sleep with our not with our life vest, that they had spotted a U-boat in the near. So, being, quote, young and everything, I just went to bed and slept. Some people stayed up all night worrying about it, but I didn't. I couldn't swim. I didn't know how to swim, so I guess, of course, even if in that time of the year, if you'd gone in there and that water, you would have not lasted too long anyway. But that was the only thing that was perhaps scary, but it was a nice trip over.
What about other personnel on board the ship? Were there troops as well as the hospital?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I don't remember who they were, though,
The hospital, how was that set up? Did you all have a certain section of the ship, or?
We probably had a certain section of, the nurses probably had a certain section of where we all stayed. I'm sure that it was not intermingled with the other crew people. But I don't remember is the hospital alone being, and I don't remember who else was on the ship.
What do you remember next in terms of the voyage? Your arrival, where did you...
where did we arrive?
Put in?
I can't remember whereabouts in England.
So you did land in England?
Yes, we landed in England, down on the south coast.
What did you do there?
Then we got on to a train and went up to, first went to Swindon and stayed there several days, and then got on and went on up to Cirencester, where our hospital was built. It was all Quonset huts, just out in the fields. Mm-hmm. It was about 8 or 9 miles out of Cirencester, and not too far from another little town.
And how long did you stay there?
Let's see.
Because this hospital group, were they not bound for Paris?
Well, I don't think you knew where you were bound for it, though. So it depended on what happened in the war situation. You were...
So you actually set up shop there in England?
Oh, yes.
And it was a functioning hospital?
Oh, yes. We were there for almost a year.
And you were taking care of people coming back
Yeah.
from the combat?
Yes, oh yes, yes.
Was this your first real experience in these kinds of wounds?
Well, yes, yes. But I was never on the severe surgical wards. Mostly mine were the more of the ambulatory patients when I was in England. But we did see the wounded. They were sent to us, and then we sent them on to home.
Anything stand out in your mind about that period?
Remember seeing the convoys pass, going south. I mean, they would pass huge convoys right before D-Day, going south.
So you were actually at this hospital while D-Day went on.
Mm-hmm.
You went in, of course, obviously, after
Yeah, we went in.
after we would take the territory.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to London or do any other kinds
Oh
of
yes.
things?
Oh yes. Yes. Yeah.
What was it like for a young Army nurse in England in wartime?
Well, it was amazing how we were so highly respected by everybody. You know, was never in any danger. You know, all the officers and the enlisted men treated you like, you know, a real person. They didn't put you down, and we could date and, you know, feel comfortable, never having to worry about it. And we went into London a couple of times. A friend of mine, I can't remember who she was, but anyway, in London, we stayed at the one of the hotels that was run by the Red Cross. You could stay there and eat there free. It was one of the big hotels. And then on one time we went up to, no, I guess that was when we got to France. I went to different places. But
How did you find the British people faring at the time you came?
well, I think that they were pretty scared still. Pretty scared. But they were very friendly. Very friendly.
Did you have opportunities to visit in private homes and
Yes,
that kind
yes,
of thing?
yes, several times.
Any
yes.
lasting friendships come out
No,
of that?
no, 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 no. I remember one time this one officer took several of us women with me, went over to Bath and saw all the ruins there. That was interesting. But
Did you ever get to Stonehenge?
no, no, no.
What, if you remember, what did wartime London look like? Obviously, you're not going to have lights and things. So, what was the general impression?
Well, I didn't travel around that much in London. The area that I saw in London was not that poorly, you know, had not been bombed. So I really didn't see that much of the bombed area.
When did it become apparent that your hospital was going to move across the channel?
Well, right after, maybe even before right after D-Day, we were getting packed up. We went into France. Now, I'm not quite sure which beach it was. It was the same beach that everybody else went in, Utah or Omaha, which one that was. And we're there on the coastline for several days or a week or so before we got on a train and went into Paris. And we took a long time getting to Paris because they had to repair the railroad track as we kept going. And we got into Paris right after the Germans had left. Right after the Germans had left Paris.
What did you find there?
Paris? Paris is the most beautiful city known to man. And there was no damage to Paris. You know, they had not had any bombings like London, and it was just beautiful.
What about the Parisian reception?
Good. Very good. Yeah, very good. I mean, they weren't hung up about us not speaking French because we did not, party with them back and forth. I never was real close to any of the French, but the ones that we did meet were very nice.
What about the facilities for the hospital?
We went into a hospital that the Germans had used as a hospital out in La Bessenay. And knowing the Germans, it was very clean. It was a real nice little hospital there with the nurses' quarters and everything. But, it didn't take too long to fix it up.
Did they leave anything behind, or was it empty?
That I can't remember. I don't remember them leaving anything.
And once again, the 4 or 5 friends are still with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We all lived in the same hut, we called it, and we're still friends.
What were the differences in the casualties you treated there? Did you see any difference now that you're closer to the front?
No, no. No, they came in. I remember after the bulge, we got a lot in. They came in truckloads. But of course they took care of them as fast as they could, and then got the ones that could go home, got them out as fast as they could too. But they were some pretty severe casualties. That was pretty terrible.
What about the other nurses and how they reacted to these responsibilities?
Well, very responsibly, very responsibly.
No real problems in dealing with
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Ugliness of war.
No, I don't think so. No. There may have been, but we were taught pretty early on in nursing school not to become. It's not wise to get too involved, because then you burn out real fast. Yes, you have empathy, yes, but you don't, take on the worries of the world. You just can't. Doctors learn this pretty fast too. So, yes, it was pretty terrible to see a young man severely injured, but you just had to let them go. I had a friend that was in the a good friend now. I didn't know her then, but she was in a evacuation hospital, which was pretty close, and she really was affected a lot worse. And then she went into one of the Nazi camps, the Jewish concentration camps afterwards, and that really affected her. But I didn't have that kind of experience.
How long did you stay in Paris?
Well, it was almost about 8 or 9 months. And then we were ready after the war ended well, I guess even right before the war ended in Europe. There were a whole group of us that were being sent back to go to the Japanese territory. And we got over in some place, and then the war was over, and we came home and did not have to go. That was in September, when the war over in September.
Well, actually, it's going to be before that in August, is when the 2 bombs are dropped and the Japanese
okay. Yeah.
surrender.
Yeah, well.
What did you do after you got back to the United States? Was that the conclusion of your military service?
Yes.
What was your thinking on career in the military versus
It didn't ever dawn. I didn't ever think about career in the military. Never. There were. I got out of the service in February of 46, I guess that's right. But I had gotten out when I first came home. I just had all that was leave time, from October to February. And then there were a group of us, this group that had been together all together. We went to school. We went up to the University of Michigan and went on the GI Bill. Got my degree in public health nursing. So.
Well, a lot of nurses met men during the war and married them and started families after the war. How come you didn't do that?
Didn't meet the right one, I guess. No. Well, you didn't know them that long. See, we were always constantly, they were going or you were going, moving. So you didn't, never that close. Of course, there was a lot of doctors, but we didn't, the doctors and the nurses didn't date too much together. Why, I don't know. But of course, most of the doctors were married doctors. They were married. There were a few of them that weren't, but many of them were.
Well, what happened to you after Michigan? Is this where you met your husband?
Yeah, this is where I met my husband, Mm-hmm.
What was he doing there?
He was a student.
What was his name?
Roy Smith. Roy H. Smith, Jr. Mm-hmm. He was a student. He was studying engineering there.
What about your, well, of course, Anna is still with you. Did she go to Michigan?
Yes, yeah.
What about your other two siblings?
My brothers, they served in the, Europe, and both of them have died.
But did both of them survive the war?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And what did they do immediately after the war? They go to school?
No, neither one of them went to school. They continued their work.
In Henrietta?
One was in Louisiana and one was in around Henrietta, that area.
Looking back over your war service, going all the way back to 1941, can you think of anything else that you would like to say regarding your experience that maybe you haven't had an opportunity to mention?
Well, I feel I was very fortunate to have lived in that time, to have had the experiences that I did have. I felt like we were doing something worthwhile, but it was a traveling and things that I would not have done otherwise. Seeing the world, and it was a good education, and then the opportunity to the GI Bill. All these things were, I don't regret having. I never did feel sorry for myself in the service. And we were never in any great danger. We were always far enough back, like we weren't up in one of the evacuation hospitals, so we were never in any, serious danger of being. I'm sure that things could have happened, but they'd more or less stopped dropping the bombs in England when we were there, and Paris the Germans had moved out, and that was it, in Paris.
Would you think, how would you equate your experience in World War II to, let's say, your daughter, if she had come to you and said she was joining the Army and going to Vietnam as a nurse? Would you have looked at that any differently as a mother? Maybe putting yourself in the position that your mother was in.
I don't know. Probably was. I can't imagine how my mother and father lived through that many years of having 4 kids in the service all overseas at the same time.
During the war.
During the war. Yeah, during the war. Now, the one brother was with the 36th Division, and he was in much, closer to the war than this other brother.
Where did he serve? What year?
That I can't remember. He didn't go over till much later. But he was not in he was not an infantryman. And I think those are the ones that were much more dangerous situations than some of the others.
How would you say that your experience in World War II changed the way you went about your nursing career? Did it have any impact at all on your nursing career?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I did not work as a nurse after I got out of Michigan. I was married and started having children, so I didn't do any nursing until I went back into nursing as a school nurse. I never did go back into any hospital nursing.
I see.
It was too well. You can't go back. I mean, you have to take lots of training to just walk back in and start over again. Things change, so I never went back in. But school nursing is more public health nursing, and that's what my degree was in, public health nursing.
Anything else you'd like to add? Well,
No.
thank you very much for the interview.